Everywhere I go, people stopping. We the whole party, yeah, we popping. Turn your heads when the beat dropping. 3, 2, 1, go on and lose your minds. Woo! Go on and lose it.
Welcome back to TBD Talks. I am your host, Josh, and this is Travis, your other host. And then we have two awesome people on the TBD Talks for this one. We got Nathan.
How's it going?
And then we got Joe.
Hola.
And today's episode is the American Dream dead? What do you guys think about that topic?
I think that it has been made significantly.
You went way into the topic. All right, you just gotta say like I like it, or
fair enough. All right,
he's already like fuck the American Dream.
I didn't say fuck the American Dream. Whoa! I didn't say that.
Whoa! Hey.
I think that it's a good topic. Yeah, I think it's a great dream, but I think that for younger generations, it's a lot harder to attain.
Okay, we'll start there. So, elaborate.
Pretty well said.
So we live in North Idaho.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's different for every area, but let's say North Idaho is one of those outliers.
Sure. Yeah.
I feel like it's pretty much the same as California, to be honest, but nowadays. So give us your take. So like
you just pissed off all the Idaho people in one go.
For the younger generation.
So just for the younger generation, like for me personally, if I did not have outside help to get the money together to get a loan, I wouldn't have been able to get a house. I work as a bartender as it sits, and I've been working at this bar for 3 years. For the bar industry, I make good money. But again, if I did not have other forces come into play, I wouldn't have been able to afford a house. The only other person I know in my age range, well, I know two people who are in this, who managed to buy a house, and both of them could only afford double wides. That's all they could actually qualify to earn when they were still making, combined them and their spouse, over $3,000 a month.
Whew.
Yeah.
On a mortgage?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Damn.
So they made over $3,000 a month combined, and they could only afford a double wide.
But is that the American Dream, though?
Well,
is owning a house
I think that's been a part of it, because I think that a lot of people in my age, and even millennials too, were sold this idea that the American Dream is get married, have 2.3 kids or whatever it is, have 2 kids basically, and then have the white picket fence with a house
With a sheepdog.
Yeah, and have a dog.
Yeah, of course the sheepdog.
And a cat,
Can't leave that out.
Yeah, of course. If you're feeling frisky, but it's like I feel like the biggest expense in that is obviously the house, because you can have a wedding. You can go down to a courthouse and get married for I think in Idaho it's like $100. So that part isn't necessarily hard. You could do that on a whim, but where it gets expensive is having a house. That's the biggest part, is having an attainable piece of property that is within your financial reach.
What made you decide on the American Dream being like that?
I think it has something to do with stability.
Yeah,
Sorry to cut in, but
yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right.
I think that our generation before us, like our parents and our grandparents, all aspired to having a sense of stability, having a family, having a home, being able to, we go back like 50, 60 years. The husband worked his ass off. The wife stayed home with the kids, all that's all changed a little bit. But
yeah,
that home was a centerpiece of what it meant to live in America, was you had your home. And I don't know when apartment living started. Maybe it was always there, but that's had a huge emergence.
It was transitional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was back then it was transitional. Bachelors had apartments, roommates, women, same thing. And then they got married and they established, a home, had children. And the big thing was I think what's left is the ability to really own the home.
Yeah.
Versus mortgaging a home.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that happened, I think. it's all become a consumable payment market. That's why nobody buys a car. They lease a car because they couldn't afford the car that they're leasing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you see people with $80,000 pickup trucks and the payment's $1,300 a month. That's fine. They can do that, maybe. But they can't take $85,000 and put it down and buy the truck.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They don't really own it.
Well,
They use it.
one of
Yeah.
the main reasons I wanted to bring up this topic was that I feel like right now, as it stands, we are at a point where the mean income of most people, the average person, and most of us at this table are either entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. So we have no plan to be at that level where we're just the average person. But the average person being able to actually live a fulfilled life in what was the established American dream, I feel is quickly going by the wayside. I have a brother, I have family, I have people in my life that are my age and younger, and I'm like, I just shrug because I've been fortunate in the way that my life has played out. I've worked my ass off for it, but I've also made really good decisions as things unfolded, where I have a home, I have a daughter, I have a wife, and soon everything will just be manageable, and then I can attain higher goals. But even the bottom rung of what I would expect of my life, some of the people that I know can't attain.
Well, let me ask you. I think the good, excuse me, the good litmus test of that is, think about your parents. I've never met them, but I've heard about them. Right? Could your parents today, or when they were working, if they still are, I don't know if they are or not, and with their income, how long have they lived where they live?
Since 2007.
Okay, so in 2007, they purchased this house, correct? Well, if they had the same income that they had in 2007 to qualify to buy that house, and the house that they live in right now, they couldn't buy it again.
Right.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, the property values go up, which drive local people that have grown up here. They can't buy it. And it's not just here; it's everywhere where this huge escalation of property values have happened. So that's a clear indication that the American dream is gone for your parents if they want to live in this neighborhood and buy a house that they don't own now. Now, if they were to sell their house, they're going to generate X amount of profit, right? But they can't buy a house in the same neighborhood with that profit and maintain the same payment. It would almost be impossible.
Right.
They could leave and go to North Dakota or some other strange place. Not that North Dakota is strange, but some place where the property value, they could buy a house for $300,000, pay cash for it, and put the rest in the bank. That's what's happening everywhere, and that's what's driving the ability to own a home or buy a home, I should say.
Yeah.
You never really own it. It goes away. And that's a big thing. People that grew up here, like you grew up here. You're fortunate enough you got it. You got a house when they were reasonable, but you couldn't buy your house now.
No, it's twice the price.
Oh, it's insane. I mean, we live in a macro. It's a macro bubble, not a micro bubble, but a macro bubble since COVID. Like I remember, I bought my house in it was way out of town, north in Hayden Lake. I mean, I'm in the middle of nowhere out there, right?
Must be nice.
Yeah, and I paid. It was like under $400,000.
Wow.
17 acres. Now.
Holy cow.
Now.
Oh my God.
No, seriously. Now, the people all around me. It's a cool house, But now all the people around me, they've took the money and ran and sold. And when I leave my driveway, it's not uncommon for a guy to drive by my mailbox in a Ferrari.
Holy
I mean,
cow.
the homes up there are like, $3 to $4 million. That's just ridiculous. So let's say you take the money and you move, right? Where are you going to go? You got to go farther out to get that same type of a place. That place is kind of unique. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and the town grew out to there. you know. But I mean, like in downtown Coeur d'Alene, I mean, the homes that sold in 2010 for $240,000, you know, in the grid area, you know, where the original Coeur d'Alene was. So
Yeah.
they go for 900 grand, some of them.
Oh yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Like
So I'm
for,
gonna push back on all of that though. The American dream. I feel like we're so fixated on the home prices, where like hypocritically we can be like, oh, back then they didn't have X, Y, and Z. Now we live in the 20th century, like
21st
or 21st century.
Right.
We have technology, we have this, but then it's like, oh, but we can't buy a house. It's like, well, yeah, we don't live back in the fucking back in the day, right? The American dream is, I feel like it's basically having a choice to live your life, make a choice of what you want to do. Do you want to go to school? Do you want to work 2 jobs and make it work, right? Like I could totally live here if I work 2 jobs easily. I worked 3 jobs at one point and I was making good money. That was a choice I made back in the day to support a family, right?
Well, I think
but that's the American dream. I have a choice to do that.
you're right, and I think that's been an evolution of what the American dream is. But what we've seen from previous generations is the latter, right? Is that, or not the latter, but it is the, like we said, the wife, the kids, the house, the car. And that's something that has been attainable for others, and it is much harder to get to now.
Yeah, but
you're right. Now it's a thing that,
some
if you
people
want
are
to do
less
that.
happy though.
Sure, yeah, you're right.
Like,
And
I
there will
wouldn't
be
say it's an American dream to have a house and have a toxic relationship,
A bunch of payments.
and a bunch of payments and living paycheck to paycheck just because I have all of the cool things back in the day, where it's like you can be renting for half the cost of whatever your mortgage is and living comfortably, and then
Here's the thing, though.
driving a fucking car that probably
So
doesn't have payments.
if I could
like-
really quick, it's not actually even half the cost to rent. It's really not. So the apartment I was in 2 years ago, which is, right before I moved into our house, the way we timed it out is our lease ended and we were able to move. We had a month overlap between the house and the apartment. And they gave us the notice like, hey, if you want to re-up your your lease with the apartment, it was going to be $2,400. My mortgage on a $415,000 home at 13% down is actually $2,500.
Yeah, just get a smaller place.
Well, sure, but it's like my house is kind of big, but 300 feet of it is taken up.
Well,
or 300 square feet is
Josh, you're
taken up.
missing the
By,
point.
your
Like
humidor, by the humidor in the bar, I saw it.
his apartment would have been the same cost of his house.
Well, no, I mean nowadays the apartments are like $1,400 for a 3-bedroom right now.
That might be the case right now, but
This is, Josh brought this up. That's why I wanted this, because I do this math all the time, no matter where you're at, right? Josh is exactly right. If you talk about the American dream, what's the American dream? The American dream is to be financially independent, period.
Stability.
Yeah, stability. Financially independent. I mean, you don't rely on anything. You in the end, all your bills are paid. You pay your phone bill and you put gas in your car. That's really right.
Yeah.
Well, I just ran like here. Nathan said, like, let's just say the average house in Coeur d'Alene is $500,000. That's not very far off, right? So, if you want to talk about fiscally responsible versus these people chasing this ridiculous mortgage-driven American dream, so you have $500,000, you put $100,000 down, which is 20% down, right? You're going to finance $400,000, right? Your payment is going to be $3,400 a month on right now 7% 30-year fixed, right? Well, if you multiply that out, you got $100,000 in cash. We're talking about money, gentlemen.
Right.
Money, not like numbers.
Yeah.
on paper.
At that point, if you have $100,000, you're
hold on. We're talking about money, right? So you put $100,000 down, then you take your payments and multiply it times 60. That's 5 years. $204,000. Then you have insurance on that over 5 years, $18,000. Then you have taxes on that, which is 20. That totals to $342,000. That house you just bought, right, would probably rent for $2,800 a month. 60 months, that's $168,000. You deduct the two. In the end, you'll walk away from that house that you bought, but you leased it, right, with 200 grand in cash. All right? The guy that owned the house or bought the house thinks he owns it, right? He's got to sell it, pay the commissions, pay the capital gains on it. You walk away from living in the same property with $200,000 in cash. Now, if you did that twice, right, you'd have 400 grand in cash. You could leave this area, go pay cash for a house, and do your thing.
Sure.
Leasing is much smarter in certain markets than buying because you
Sure.
really don't own it.
Right.
And everybody goes, yeah, but that house will be worth. Nah, talk about the people in 2006
Right.
and
Well,
lost their asses on
and
this.
the only reason I bring it up is because Devin wanted to buy a house, and I told her no.
I don't think so.
And I said we need to just rent for a while. Like there's literally 0 point of buying a house. But in bless her heart, she dove into it and was like, why do I want to buy a house? And I was like, she came to the conclusion like, I guess it's just the how it looks
That's
to people.
right.
Like am I successful, or like am I like doing well if I don't have a house or not? And I'm like, no, that's irrelevant. Like rent right now, like we got a good rent. We have a fucking 6-bedroom home, for $2,800 a month, which is right dead center what you were saying. But whereas right now we'd be paying fucking buku money buying the house, and she almost wanted to like hit up the landlord to buy the house. And I was like, no. Like right now, and we're perfectly content, right? Like we're not super, broke. We're not overlapping our bills. Like we're good. And I'm like, I feel like that's the American dream already. Like I'm more privileged than many people, but it's that mindset of fixating on what the American dream was, but then everything else in your life is saying, well, no, we don't live back then. You you might as well just live exactly how you were back then, and then complain about the American dream of, well, we can't do this. Okay, but you have all these things that have happened, and push comes to shove. Yeah, we can't buy a house right now. Like the housing isn't like it was back in the day. But that's still people moving from other countries come over here. They don't fucking give a shit about that. They're just like, sick. I can make as much money as I want. I can work as many jobs as I want. I can make as much, have as many kids and, choose who I want to be with. And yet, like, there's so many things you can do that you can't do in other countries, which is why the American dream is so important, right? And so, like, when I think about the American dream, like, yeah, I can choose to be broke. I can work one job and then complain that I can't make my rent. Or I can go get a second job at night and make my rent plus save money now, right?
Or you could buy that house you live in and never be able to pull it off. That's my point.
Right.
That's my point. And the thing is, I didn't even figure into that 5-year period. Like if you have a problem with your water heater, you just call your landlord and he puts it in.
Right.
If you're buying you don't own it, the bank owns it. If you need a new water heater, you got to put that in. You got to pay for the plumber. You got to do everything. This is a net deal. You pay $2,800 a month. You live in the same house. The neighbor goes, yeah, but they don't own it. Yeah, but in the end, you can go, I got 200 grand in cash for
Right.
5 years. And what do you got? Well, I got bald tires on my BMW. That's what I got.
Right. But that's why I want to. That's why I'm saying like the American dream that people think is a farce. Like the American dream
It's an
is
illusion.
basically like
Illusion.
you get to live in a country where you can make your own decisions. It is a decision to buy a house now. Like Travis, super awesome that you bought your house back in the day. Your mortgage is, really, really good. Yours is really good. Like you guys bought the houses when you want, but that shouldn't be like the standard of the American dream of like, well, I don't own my home. It's like, what? I'm renting and I feel like I'm living in bliss compared to.
Yeah, well, he doesn't own it either. The bank owns it.
Right. Well, you know what I mean. Like technically speak, But like I feel like I'm living the American dream. I have a business,
Absolutely.
you know, I make my own hours. I have kids, I have a family, like things are good.
I think part of it is that with owning a house, you do have certain freedoms. Yes, you do have to pay, like Joe said, if the water heater goes out, you got to cover that. That's on you. But you're not, well, not always. You're not wall to wall with someone else, which, yeah, you can rent a house, which does cost more, but like you don't have to worry about neighbors necessarily as much. You can paint the walls the way you want. You can do what you want. There's no outside of city limits and like city based ordinances. You don't have to worry about how loud you are, when you are, because you have the freedom to do that in your own home. Like one of the big things that me and my wife got to do when we bought our house is we got to actually put nails in the wall to put up paintings and put up other, wall art. We weren't allowed to do that. And there's a lot of places where you can't do that. There was I'm not even kidding. So this was an actual rule at the apartment we had. And I tried to follow up with them. They said you can't have, quote, too many house plants. And so I asked them, I was like, what qualifies as too many? Because, me and my wife wanted to get a couple. And we're like, well, what's the limit? And they said, oh, it's up to our discretion. And it's like, well, what the hell does that mean? It's within the freedom of finance, there's also a level of freedom within, to Joe's credit, he's right. You don't truly own the house, but you have a lot more freedoms within it. I don't have to answer to anyone as to what I do with my house. As long as I make the payments, no one's going to bother me about it, assuming I'm not breaking any laws. Like I got a wood stove put in last year. If I didn't have that happen, or I couldn't do that in an apartment or a rented home, oh, hey, you've got I have reptiles. You can't have reptiles in a lot of places, and you can't try and reason with them and be like, well, hey, it's not like the kind that's going to crawl up the wall and escape. Like I put a lid on it and it is sealed in. They don't care. They just go, no, you're breaking a rule, so we can't do that. There's a level of freedom within a house that makes it kind of how Travis said, a centerpiece for stability and freedom. You're right. There's a lot of financial sense to, hey, let's not buy a house right now because it doesn't make sense. But I think as a general mark, how many people can afford to buy a home is a very good way to tell how your economy is going and how much one generation can actually achieve.
Well, I think buying a home and renting a home, we're getting caught up on buying a home being like the categorization of the American dream success. Well, when I think of it, I try to think, white picket fence, the dog, and all that stuff that Nathan said. Like, I feel like that was the standard back in the day. There's a big conflict in what people are satisfied with these days, because if you go to the cities, there are people who live in really, really small apartments that cost more than my house a month, maybe more than twice my house a month. They make more, but they work their asses off and they go home and they sleep, and then they get a couple days off to do whatever they do, and they never own anything. They never own a car. They Uber around. They do everything they do, and they're completely content and happy with that.
Right.
And for me, I make probably half or a quarter of what they make, even running my own company with no caps and everything for entrepreneurship. And I live like a fucking king. Like what it would cost to have what I have in the city would be like millions and millions. But they are completely content with their lifestyle. And that is, in essence, the American dream for the cities. I feel like there's
it's more opinionated, I guess, right?
I guess so. I mean, I read something a while back about how a lot of the younger people are shifting to short-term things that they're not interested in owning anything. They're not interested in having any any substantial ownership of any of their stuff. That's why everything is shifting to rentals and everything else.
Experience
Leasing vehicles, renting homes, renting apartments, that they don't actually have anything to their name.
no net worth.
And they live in experiences. They have their money, they spend their money, they get that experience, but it's never having ownership of anything. And for me, it's hard to understand because I feel like for me, ownership is some kind of benchmark where I feel a sense of security when that thing is mine and it can't be taken away again. I feel like that's something to strive towards personally. I don't want to be controlled or threatened by losing something. Granted, I won't own my home for the next probably 40 years at this point, and we'll see if I'm still around. But that's the goal for me, to have a sense of stability and to not feel threatened by the ability that someone's going to show up and kick me out of what used to be my home, but I was renting it, that I'm going to have something taken away from me because it was never mine to begin with. I forget.
Isn't that life though?
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
it's life, but it's what I'm striving
No,
towards.
he's got a very good point. We're talking about two different things. We're talking about then and now, even with you. Like you couldn't pull off your house now.
Oh yeah,
But-
there's no way.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, the whole basis of the podcast is the American Dream dead. Well, I don't think that I have to agree with Josh. I don't think that having a home under mortgage or even own. I think it's financial independence is the American dream. Meaning, like you just indicated, I want to, in a certain amount of time, I'm going to pay my house off. Based on the trajectory of being an entrepreneur, you'll probably pay it off way sooner than your mortgage. You're just going to pay it off like 3, 4, 5, 7 years, whatever it is. It's not going to go 40 years, 30 years, or whatever.
Right.
But
for the average person, it's a little different.
Well, I mean, it's obvious that the system is seriously. I mean, it's very obvious if you look at it that the financial market with mortgages and homes is really not the American dream. It's an exploitation of banks, and I'm gonna say that and let it go because it's simple. I'm 67 years old. All right. Now, I can go out and buy a house tomorrow and put down whatever it is, right? And the mortgage broker is going to tell me, well, this house is $500,000 or $700,000 or whatever it is, right? You put down whatever it is, the payments are this, blah, 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 and it's a 30-year fixed. All right, that guy's banking on the fact I'm going to live to be 97 years old. And now they have 50-year mortgages. So they'll write me a mortgage at 50.
You do look spry, Joe.
Well, thank you. But what I'm saying is, why would any lending institution loan somebody money knowing they're not going to live long enough to pay it off? Right? That's how corrupt and weird that is. It should be more like, I'll tell you what, it might be a stretch for you, right? If we write your mortgage at 30 years, it'll be $3,000 a month. If we write your mortgage at 15 years, it'll be $2,120. If we write it for 7 years, it'll be this. Well, you're in your younger years, you might anticipate it. You can always rewrite it, but why don't you write the mortgage to where you can pay it off in like 7 or 8 years? Well, it's because you can't do that because these homes are too expensive. The same reason why they do that, like the $80,000 pickup truck. I can pay $1,500 a month, but I can't give you $80,000.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's why, like,
And you don't need an $80,000 pickup truck to get around.
No.
Okay. I'll answer my phone. I don't need
No.
no Bluetooth. You've seen my truck. I have a 95 pickup.
Yeah.
I love my truck.
You have a nice truck.
and that's why I feel like nowadays how people say minimum wage. Like, if you're working minimum wage, you can't afford. Well, I mean, in my opinion, that's they're choosing to just work one minimum wage job.
That's
I mean, everybody has a choice to do whatever they want, right? Like, so if I'm working, let's say full-time minimum wage, and then out here, Panda Express right now is advertising $21 an hour. Minimum wage is what they're offering. Let's say $15, whatever. Let's say 8 hours. They're working. They're making okay money to survive, but then they're getting off, and then they're like, well, I can't afford anything. Well, what are you doing with all of the rest of your time you're off, right? Like, do you have kids? Do you have responsibilities? Like, are you prevented from working another job? Like you're working a minimum wage job. Like that, that is the job that you chose. Or are you working towards something bigger? Or are you going to a trade? Or are you going to a private owned company that will pay you more? Or are you getting a skill so you can get a job
say they work that minimum wage job, and then they take a night job, and then they work both jobs, and now they have enough money to do something, but they're working both jobs. They have no time to do anything.
Well, that's only so you get an 8-hour day, but then you get a part-time night job. Like you're only like 14 hours of the day. Like that's.
I mean, it's a fair thing. You do what you have to do to survive. But what I'm saying is, if you have to spend every waking minute to work in order to have any money to do anything other than just sit in your box at home to go back to work, like that's why the whole city appeal. Right? That's why the whole city appeal doesn't appeal to me. It's like, you go to work and you go back. You go to work, you go back. You go to work, you go back, and there's no ability to afford anything else but maybe an ounce.
Yeah, that's what most people do, though.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe that's the American dream, but I feel like
what 99%
and that's something I want to ask Joe about. Was it always this way where that was all anyone was able to do? Like, in order to actually.
Well, when I and Abraham Lincoln used to sit around the table and talk. No, I get what you're saying. Actually, I graduated from high school in '75, and I think there's a real time frame between '75 and about '84 where that was the transition between where you could go get a job like with Boeing or some airplane company or a regular, adult blue collar job, and then you would be able to buy a house and pay it off, save enough money to retire,
have a pension.
Yeah, exactly, that type of a thing, and even put enough money aside to put your kids through college or one or two kids through college, as long as they didn't go to like Stanford or something like that. And that's all right. But what ended up happening is college got eroded into like, go to school, get your MBA and move on. Now there's guys with MBAs that can't get a job at Jack in the Box. So college is just now not the answer. Now I have to side with Josh about you either have the intestinal fortitude to go out on your own and do something, or you're going to have to do more to get more, because nobody's going to give it to you. And I think that's the biggest problem. Not so much in Coeur d'Alene, not so much here, because there's, even kids that are, actually more now, that are younger than like 30. They're not a Gen Z kind of kid unless they come from outside. They promised everything. You know what I mean? You've got to do way more than anybody else. You have to think outside the box, like you said. Learn a trade. I mean, I'm a firm believer that in 5 years, your doctor won't make as much money as a plumber, because doctors are completely bound by insurance companies, and my orthopedic surgeon has changed his profession to, this guy's an orthopedic surgeon. I mean, a good one. All right, he's a veterinarian. He goes, they don't sue me. People love their pets and pay their bills.
Yeah,
I mean, you're talking about you're talking about a guy he's in his 50s now, but he's a phenomenal athlete. And for a guy like that has all those kinds of brains to make that transition, that says something. And I look at Mike Rowe, on TV about, dirty jobs and everything. Like he's always been a promoter of trades. And I'm telling you, there's certain things you can't get away with. Plumbing, welding, You know, in fact, in the
CNC machine operating.
hold on, exactly. In the same group, this orthopedic group, another doctor who I know very well, he's got a son, and Doug is, he's not even 60 yet, and his son was in the Navy, and he became a salvage diver, and he went on to be a welder, underwater welder, and he works.
They make good money there.
Listen, it's 5 months out of the year. He's still a U.S. citizen. He lives in Singapore now. He makes about $300,000 a year and works 3 or 4 months. In fact, Doug even said, he goes, you know, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I went to school forever, blah, blah. If I pay off all my debts and everything else, that kid's got a bigger portfolio than I do.
Wow.
You know, because he got out of the Navy and learned to trade. You know, so, I mean, I think what you have to do is the American dream dead? I think the American dream lies in your ability to understand what's going to happen to you if you don't do something. And
It gives you the choice to do
any
that.
decision is a decision to do nothing.
Yeah.
Like like what you said, you know, you work 8 hours, you got this other time, whatever it is. You can have a night hustle or whatever. That's fine. That you've made a decision to do that. Well, you're going to have more spending money. That's fantastic. But you need to have a plan that works for you.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a plan, you're in someone else's plan. Like you're going to be at, what is it, Peking Bowl, or what did you call that? The restaurant.
Which one?
The restaurant, the minimum wage restaurant.
Panda Express.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Panda Express, Peking Bowl, same thing.
Yeah, in 10 years, you're making $23 a pound.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and
I mean, that literally my sister came to the conclusion of that, whereas my dad's stuck in that like old mentality as well of like, you know, get a career, you know, buy a house, get married, have kids, you know, like he's totally super traditional, living in his own world over there. And my sister tried to, you know, had a debate with him that I backed her up on. She's making like $200,000+ a year in the insurance industry, but because she hops. She's not staying at one job. She's getting offers from other jobs in other companies, and then often getting higher wages because of that, and then going to another, you know, company, and then they're offering her higher wages. And so she's went from like, you know, 4 or 5 different companies to make what she makes now.
yeah.
Whereas like before, back in the day, you know, if it was like, if I grew up in my dad's era, I could work at Northrop Grumman or Edwards Air Force Base back in the day, have a pension, you know, fucking work there and live great in
That ship
retirement,
sailed,
right?
man.
Yeah.
But you know, I was born in the '90s, right? Like so, like that shit doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
And so, you know, whereas it now is like trades or like, you know, offers or companies wanting, you know, your skill sets, and you know, like you want to make a lot more money, like you gotta do stuff. Like if you're just choosing to work at like the minimum wage jobs, which are they're minimum wage for a reason, they're minimum requirements, minimum, you know, effort. They might be hard, but like at the end of the day, the skill sets needed for those jobs are not the skill sets that set you apart to make more money. And that's a choice, right? Like if I was to go in the workforce now, I would probably get a job that is well over $100,000 a year because of my skill set. I would find a company that wants something that I can provide because of what I've learned. And I didn't get a college degree or whatever. I mean, for example, I moved here.
That would get in the way.
Yeah, I moved here and I ended up working as a CNC machine operator at Hayden Aluminum up there. Like zero knowledge of CNC machines. I just knew the backbone of coding and yada yada from what I've learned, and I was able to get a job as a CNC machine operator before I went full-time entrepreneur out here, and fucking CNC aluminum parts for dental offices, right? Like super random, but it was making 60 grand a year. Right?
Yeah.
And I only worked 8 hours a day, you know, and then I got a second job, you know,
Right.
and then it made another 30 grand. So I was almost at $100,000 just working 10, 11 hours a day, and then had the rest of the day to hang out with the family or whatever. And
Right.
that was a decision I made.
Well, I think the need to adapt is super.
You're ambitious, and people aren't.
Well, and that's what I was about to say.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
ambitious too, and I've always. Well, that's one of the things I admire about all of you. Actually, is there's incredible drive. You're not willing to settle.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big problem. I think that people today they think something is going to happen, and it's not.
Right. And well, and I think the willingness to push and have drive is important. I just think that also the acknowledgement of needing to mourn the fact that because there are people who just need to work. Like there are people who need to do the jobs that don't pay very much. Those jobs have to be done if society is going to continue on.
Absolutely.
Those jobs need to be done, and I think it's sad that those people who work those jobs can't just also live the life that they think is, you know, normal within reasonable ways. Because I look at, and maybe the apartment cost has gone down, but rentals, apartments, like even the small ones, cost almost as much as my house. And you and I are fucking grinding. And until a couple months ago, I was struggling to pay for my house, which is cheaper than those apartments. And I'm thinking, like, goddamn, like, well, you and I work really, really hard, don't take many days off, are just going and going and going and going. Granted, there's no limits to what we make, but for people who are just a cashier at Albertsons or Safeway now, because Albertsons got canceled or something. Okay. Like, I want to mourn the fact that a person can't just have a job, do the job, trade their time, go home, have time with their family, and still survive. Like, to me, that's a problem. Like, that's a problem with the American dream or whatever it is. Like, we can get into the minutia of how you define it, but when apartments are as expensive as houses and people can't just work one job and have time with their family or have free time, they have to take a second job just to afford living. To me, I find that frustrating. It's not a problem for me because of the decisions I've made, and that's fine. Like, I'm happy that things worked out for me, but it bothers me that people working a regular job who don't have the drive to work every weekend, work till 3 a.m. every night, come up with ideas on how to push the needle constantly. I love that shit. That's me. But everyone else needs to be able to be them. And the fact that some people can't just work and be cogs in the machine, which is needed, and still be able to afford enjoy their lives. Right. I want them to enjoy their lives because that's their purpose. Well, and to me, that's where this whole topic came from. American dream, sure, but like, can they even survive?
Where do you? Then let me ask you this. I totally understand that, but what's the solution?
I have no idea.
Exactly. I think that there's things that are gonna. Well, the bottom line is, I think we have a generation of people. Definitely not in this room, but we have a generation of people that.
He's saying that because I'm Gen Z.
Oh no! I mean,
no, I know.
You guys are half my age. All right, and believe me, I'm not. If you want to, you guys know me. I'm very old school, but I embrace technology as long as it improves my life. But I see that there's just a generation of people that are, especially in the United States. I've lived everywhere. I've lived on 5 continents, and this situation you're talking about doesn't exist every other place I've been.
That's what I was going to ask you.
I'm just telling you, these people here. I believe me, I love being an American, but they are just that entitlement thing. They just think that everything should just flow to them. You know, I know Josh's background.
So
Nothing flows to anybody. You got to make. It's amazing. The harder you work, the luckier you become. Well, I guess that's an American thing, but it isn't in this generation. You know,
I see what you're saying.
Nathan's completely different from that.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying, but I think the problem also arises because you're right. We are in a very unique situation being in America and having these opportunities.
Oh yeah.
But at what point do you just accept that America has changed and gotten, I mean, arguably you could say the fact that you can't just have one spouse work 8 hours a day to afford, you know, make ends meet, put money in the bank, all that, to where it is now that if you want to have that kind of stuff, you and your spouse both need to work, you know, full-time jobs. Mm-hmm. Why do we accept that?
Well,
Why have we decided that's the new swap?
We don't have a choice.
We have the privileges of living out here. I mean,
You're right, but why don't we do something?
Well, no. Here's the deal. What you said is a great question, and what Travis said about I just don't. He understands, but why can't this happen? And a normal person, like the cog in the wheel you're talking about, that's somebody that's working at North 40 or someplace like that. That's not somebody that worked at Martin Marietta or Boeing.
Right.
Those jobs are being vacated by everything that technology provides. So the answer to that is my personal belief in our lifetime, what little I have left and what more you guys have left. I think the fact that you can work remotely, and if you have something to contribute that's going to be necessary, it's not going to matter where you live. So you can move to a place, like seriously, right here, you can move to Wallace and buy a house very reasonably, and that's only a half hour away or 40 minutes away. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think you're going to see these more remote areas. People are going to go there and have exactly what you think they should have.
Yeah.
Come home, be with their wife and their children or their dog or whatever they want.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I have a question. So when everybody like goes to places that are more affordable, like where does it end though?
there's so much land.
Oh yeah, if you look at,
I mean,
but then who's left?
I don't want to
like the rich people move in.
Hold on, I don't want to make it political, but the bottom line is all you got to do is look at an electoral map and look at the blue spots and all the red spots. That's where they can go.
Yeah.
I think so. We're looking at I think the notion of the working one job, coming home to the family, loving life. It's a really narrow scope, right? Like, I was just watching a YouTube video of people, visiting a town where a lady was having to mine gold out of mined rocks because as women you can't go in the mines of this area, and she's working 10 hours 11 hours a day hammering rocks to find gold to supply for her family, and we're over here like, well, I shouldn't have to work at my minimum wage job, and
Josh is like me,
whatever. And I'm like, dude, this lady's fucking hammering rocks to find a little bit of gold to supply for her family, and she's not complaining one bit. She had all smiles and shit. That was just her life, right? Like, that's where she is. Whereas, like, we're in America, right? Like, we have the choices to make any decision we want. That's what I think the American dream is. We shouldn't be guaranteed to be like, if I make this status quo of one job, I should buy a house, I should have a family, my wife shouldn't have to work. Like, that's just what happens back in the day. But then as life progresses and things become more expensive and yada yada yada, like, you just have to adapt. And that's the American dream. But you got to adapt to it, or you're just not going to pay your bills. I mean, there's nothing to it. Or go try to live somewhere in another country and experience that you don't have the choices over there like you do over here.
Well, everyone will always do what they have to do to survive. Like, that's not something that's debatable. Like, people.
I don't think.
Well,
that's-
okay.
that's
Well,
not true.
yeah. Well, then you end up on the street, and then you do what you have to do to survive. Like,
Yeah,
people
let me-
will.
there's
People
people-
to keep eating and sleeping. People will do what they need to do.
I get that.
What I'm saying though is I personally acknowledge that it's fucked up that you can't actually work
language.
a regular job. I know, right? Instagram's going to cancel me. You can't work a regular job and still survive anymore. And I understand the
But you
grind
can.
mindset.
You can.
Yeah, just take
regular
a
job
second
is
regular
CNC
job
machine
too.
Operator. I mean, that's a regular job.
No, but people still have to work
He is right. The
I like
thing
to be
is,
able to go to the grocery store. I need someone to work the till.
But there's no.
But that's a minimum wage.
There's no advancement unless they make a decision to do what they need to do to attain what you want, what you're thinking they should be able to attain, whether it's being an entrepreneur or whether it's being.
Please.
I don't think it's college. I think
Well, please, back in the day, and I don't mean to be ageist or whatever.
you're not. I like.
Travis is officially an ageist. Canceled?
Canceled. Tell me though, back in the day, could a person just straight up work at Home Depot, and that's their job, and still own a home? Was that
Travis,
possible back then?
Travis, you're focused on minimum wage, dude.
No.
Minimum
But
wage is
those
minimum wage.
jobs still have to be done.
Yeah, I know, but listen,
So whoever works
Devin,
minimum wage jobs has to take two
Yeah,
minimum wage
it's
jobs in order to
minimum
own a home.
Wage minimum,
Gentlemen,
that's an entry level. Like Devin, my girlfriend, she's a school teacher. She can live on her own. She did it.
Right.
And she worked one job, 8 hours. She came home and she has 2 kids. She takes care of them. She was able to do it all by herself.
So everyone should quit those jobs and
She's
get
a
better
teacher.
jobs, and then no one
but-
works Home Depot.
Yeah, what,
And then
that
Home
Home
Depot
Depot is a
doesn't
minimum
exist.
wage job, a minimum.
No.
That's an entry level job.
But you're distracting from the question. I'm
I'm going
asking.
to answer your question.
Okay.
All right. No, I don't think so.
No.
I think that it's a blend of what you got. You guys shouldn't argue about it because it's no. There's no argument actually. Like when you go to work at Home Depot or Walmart or anything, because there's no technical proficiency at Walmart or Home Depot, unless you used to work in your wood shop or you're retired and you went back to work there for some extra income. Those are is there a career at Home Depot? Yeah. Is there a career for the entry-level people to move up? Yeah. The chances of that happening and the ratio are very small. I think what Josh is talking about and what you're not talking about is like when he said, okay, if you live in the Seattle area or someplace where there's a big factory like Boeing, which is not a good example because they're done.
Because their planes kept crashing.
Oh, they're through, dude. Okay, so or a Martin Marietta or a defense contractor or something like that.
Raytheon.
Yeah, exactly. You can go to work there with certain skills that you learned in your life without ever going to college, and end up making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year with a pension, and you're out. That's gone. That's gone. They don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So, in answer to your question, I'm not really sure that any entry-level job is going to be it has no longer become a transitional thing to something else. It's become what people have to do to have a roof over their head and survive. And the only way out of that, I think, is either, this is just me, I think it's entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
Think about something, do it yourself, or it's going to have to be,
Learn a skill.
skill.
I'm just wondering, back in the day, was there ever a point where an entry level job could be worked for a lifetime and they could make ends meet.
I don't think so. I think what they did back then. Let me tell you something. This will blow your mind, man.
Because not everyone can be an entrepreneur.
Well, hold on. I understand that.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, in high school, I had this really great job. I loved the job. Paid $1.75 an hour. I remember getting my paycheck at the end of the week. It was like, seriously, like $38.
Yes.
It was awesome. I go out and party and, pimp beer and but I mean, I knew I wasn't going to do that forever.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the same thing as working at Burger King. I mean, I'm not sure what the adjusted dollars would be, but it's got to be about the same. You're right. It's tough. I think when you say, is it going to be available for an entry-level job? No, I don't think there's a...
Yeah.
I mean,
I completely agree with Travis.
No, seriously, when I was a kid, the wife stayed at home, took care of the kids, went to PTA meetings, all that bullshit, right?
Nice.
The husband, he went out and did his thing, whatever he did, and everybody could buy a house and they had a car. And then pretty soon it got tough, and then the wife had to get a job. Like, for instance, like if you were married, I had neighbors that were really cool people, and she was a school teacher. Well, a school teacher, that was like a deal where, it was a part-time job. I mean, she's a school teacher. She's an addition to the income. Well, now if you're a school teacher, you're the breadwinner.
If you're not in Idaho.
No, I'm serious. A school teacher here makes $60,000-$70,000 a year. They're protected. They can't get fired. It's ridiculous. I go through this school district like a weed whacker.
Well, I agree with Travis. I'm just the broad topic of American dream. I don't think people move to America and be like, I hope I can get a job at Home Depot and just not have to do anything else. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the American dream.
Yeah.
Like the American dream is making your own choices to do what you want to do. Yes, I mean, obviously a topic of discussion would be like, is minimum wage enough for people to survive? No, obviously not, dude. I mean, that's like, I can go get a minimum wage job, and if I just have one, I obviously can't live on my own. I have to rely on my spouse's income or have government assistance. Sure, but like, that's not the American dream. The American dream is to be like, I hope I can work at McDonald's the rest of my life, and that's it, and just come in for 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and not do anything else. Like, that's not the American dream.
How do you attain financial independence with that? You can't. I want to ask Nathan, what do you think the American dream is? You be honest. Be honest.
Yeah.
He clears his throat too.
Yeah.
So it's going to be serious.
I hope so.
I think the American dream at this point is closer to what Josh would think, where it where it is the freedom to do what you want, that you have the ability to make your own choices. You don't have to, as he put it, like if we were in, North Korea, we would
Opportunity.
we have opportunity. And I think that has been the core of what the American dream has been this entire time. But I think where our, not morals, our ideals collide and diverge is what it should be, and that is because, as we said earlier, people used to be able to, minimum wage, you're right, yeah, it probably never did mean that someone could live entirely on their own. It probably meant that they could get a roommate for their apartment.
Transition.
Yeah, they could transition. But I think that these days, minimum wage is, you're trapped in it. Even if you have, a roommate, you're barely making ends meet. I've got a brother and a sister-in-law who are in Seattle right now. My brother-in-law spent 3 months trying to find a job, and he wasn't like, oh, I'm fresh out of high school, I'm gonna just like get a job as some sort of like manager or something like that. Like, he was applying to grocery stores and trying to get jobs as like a stalker, and he finally found a place. And they treat him like trash.
Yeah.
Like, he's in college, he's trying to attain more, and they're disrespectful of his time, in the sense that, like, He'll say, hey, I'm not available from, 1 to 3 because I'm in class, and they'll schedule him during that time. They'll do all this kind of
They'll
trash.
replace him if he doesn't come in.
Exactly.
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, minimum wage, honestly, yeah, probably shouldn't be something that you could buy a house on. It shouldn't. It should be transitional. The problem there lies that the transition out is so hard because these giant corporations that are taking all of the profit are trying to keep these people there because most of them honestly aren't worth it to try with where they're at to become managers and higher ups in the company. So
I totally disagree though. It's not hard to get out of that. Like if I was in a transitional period, I can totally, work that minimum wage job, learn some managerial stuff, go online, YouTube. We literally have YouTube University. You can research anything in the world and be like, all right, sweet. Like I learned everything about managerial experience. Now you can go and be like, I'm going to go apply for this manager position. And you can wow the fuck out of the interviewer and be like, you know what? I dedicated 2 years of, just learning about this, and I really want to do yada yada, right?
If I could really quick, because I think that you're not necessarily wrong, but like here's the other thing. So when Daniel, my brother-in-law, was younger, he was like 16. He was editing videos for like small time companies and stuff like that, just to have like spending money for fun. He put in his own time as a 16-year-old in high school to learn a skill, to do all this stuff, and he put that on his resume, and no one batted an eye and said, "That's you've done nothing." And I don't mean
where's
like,
he applying?
I'm getting there. It's not even, I get that it's not that he's applying necessarily in those fields, which fair enough. It's not applicable. But the fact that showing interest in doing that kind of thing, taking the initiative, because having a diploma from a college means not nearly as much as it did, the fact that you show initiative means way more. Every job I've gotten has been because I showed the initiative and said, hi, I'm Nathan, and I'm here to learn a skill to try and be the best that I can within your company. Even in
which they would pay you minimum wage because you're learning something you don't know how to do.
And I get that. And I'm not saying that I was trying to go after higher than minimum wage or the minimum payment. I'm saying that even to get into the minimum, these places aren't hiring. It doesn't matter what
do you mean.
Hold on. You guys are
Del Taco says forever hiring in their little thing because they can't find enough people to work.
I get that.
Hold on. You guys are missing something. All right. Like you said, your brother's in Washington, right?
Yeah.
All right. If you ever do this, I suggest you guys do this. This is kind of cool. All right. Sobering cool. All right. You go online and subscribe to Indeed and all that bullshit where they're looking for people for work. All right. And you go do that. And then you'll see all this stuff about people hiring and everything else. See, I think that's a big myth. I don't think there's a lot of jobs out there. And I'll tell you why I tell you that. I used to do that just for the hell of it. And then I would call who's doing the hiring. They said, we're not hiring anybody. Right? They're like catfishing people, man. So they get this. So they
bastards.
Hold on. Like you said, just get me an audience with the guy that's doing the hiring, right? Like you said, I'll tell them what I can do and what I want to do. They don't do that, man. They take your application. They even have companies that'll make your application. So it selects certain things out of AI, probably.
Yeah. Well, nowadays.
In fact, with me, I wouldn't even do that, man. If I can't sit in front of somebody, the guy that's going to hire me, don't even go.
Right.
If you're going to throw it out there like a cattle call, and most of those cattle calls, they're not hiring anyone, especially in Washington.
Yeah.
My girlfriend lives over there, and I was checking that out.
Something that Joe.
Ridiculous.
Really quick, if I
something
could.
that.
Sorry, I have a bit of a counter argument to that as far as the idea of there not being that many jobs. So
No. What I'm saying is when you go online,
yeah,
and Indeed says we got this.
No, I get
if
that.
If you go to the employer and ferret it out, they say no, there's no jobs here.
I can see that happening with some, but here's the thing though, is it costs money to have Indeed advertising that you're hiring.
That's okay.
you're right. It is for a large company like Walmart or Fred Meyer.
Why would they be placing ads if like you
Exactly.
call them directly and they aren't hiring?
Like here's a good
Exactly,
hold on.
because it's going to cost them money to have this advertisement up that will get them literally nothing. And the worst part is too, so I've actually had to look into this because we're trying to find more people at the bar that I work at, is if you don't specifically spend the time to go through and look through who's applying and bar people from applying again, they can click on that ad a second, third, fourth, however many times they want. And each time Indeed is billing you for that. So one person who's just like, I just want to be on the forefront of this business's mind can cost that business quite a bit.
Well, let me tell you what I think in your case with your business, that's probably true. But I think people like the United States Post Office, all right, they're not paying Indeed shit, all right, because I see it I'll pull it up on my phone. It'll say U.S. postal workers needed in Hayden, Idaho, right? And then you click on Indeed or Job, whatever those stupid things are, right? And you go in there and then you finally click into the post offices, they're not hiring at all. So why are they doing that? And why isn't somebody going to jail for posting that stuff?
Fraud.
Yeah.
There's something I want to circle back to.
I mean, I think that's unbelievable. And what the industry says is they're just generating resumes. So when they do need somebody, they can pick one at a time. Yeah, well, in my area, you wouldn't want me going to your building with a gun.
Right.
Hey, not that I'm threatening anybody. I just think it's ridiculous to advertise that somebody needs work and they're really not doing it. You're making everybody jump through hoops and do circle jerks.
Yeah, that's gross.
Go ahead.
So something I wanted to circle back to was you mentioned transitionary jobs, and that's something I hadn't factored in because as teenagers, everyone figures you'll work at fast food or one of those entry-level jobs. And I guess it is weird. It is weird when you see like an older person working the drive-through. Like I experienced that the other day. Like there's something in you that's just like, oh, and then I didn't think about it at the time, but I remember like feeling off-put by someone who is at an age where they should be at a higher level job, working an entry-level job. And that didn't factor into my whole argument here tonight because I'm thinking that a job's a job. You should be able to work a job, whether it be entry-level or a higher level. I think that it got kind of convoluted in my mind as an entrepreneur because I was never satisfied with any of my entry-level jobs because none of them ever
made it happen.
There was always a cap in what I could achieve, and it bothered the hell out of me. So I started a company, and that became something else and became something else until we are where we are now with TBD marketing. Because I realized that I could go to school and work my ass off for a long time and try to get into one little tiny niche, and then I'd hope there'd be a job, or then I'd become an entrepreneur, but I'd be forced into that one little niche that I went to school for.
Right.
Or I could say fuck it and start a company, and people started hiring me just because I told them I could do it, and then I followed through, and I started taking on that risk. So a little bit of an apology, but like I get there are
you had an excellent point though. It's just I think the topic is the question is off. Is the American dream dead?
The question was clickbait. We're supposed to define the question later. So
because
you didn't hear that, internet.
I guess the background of like where I come from is so before I moved here. I worked as an elevator mechanic for Otis Elevators. I started as a warehouse manager, which was like I ordered parts for all the mechanics into a mechanic into a supervisor position, right? And that's because of I worked at a company that, you're working in there and they don't want to hire anybody else. They want to move you up It's because of all the shit that I ended up learning because I wanted to learn where they can rely on me, right? And that was a choice. I could have just done my status quo. I would have never been offered any other position other than what I was. And so that right there is awesome, right? Like I was able to.
Well, you're an entrepreneur then.
Right, and I hated where I was capped. So, but I ended up making like I think it was like I was at like $125,000 a year at that one job. But then I also worked a night job at Stater Brothers as a bag boy. You know, I had a uniform where I had a white collared T-shirt with a tie and a black
I've always
pants.
thought of you as a bag boy.
Stater Brothers was that store that old people go to, and they're
With a
like,
bib.
they like that fucking old nostalgic,
That's
like,
right.
you know, like, oh, the bag boy is like got a tie and shit. So but even the manager there, the branch manager, was super cool. And when I applied for that job, he's like, dude, you're way too overqualified for this job. I was like, I don't care. I'll fucking speed run this shit. I don't care. Like, if it's gonna pay me. And the guy was super chill and just gave me the job. And he was like,
Don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
yeah,
Right?
He wanted to like promote me to all these things. I was like, dude, like I'm here for the nights, like part time. Just give me the easiest job. Like I don't really care, man. But just because of my effort there, he was giving me raises because he was like, dude, you're so freaking helpful, like bag boy. And then I would go and help out other people because it's not fucking rocket science to go and stock something in the fucking back inventory, you know, and be like, all right,
You're
cool.
there anyway.
You know, and you know, but that was you know, but then that was coming to that job from like a job where it requires a fuck ton of knowledge, right? You can't just come from Stater Brothers to my job that I had at Otis and be like, I know what to do. Like, fuck no, right? That was from all of the years I hopped from trades to that job, right? Like the only reason I got that job was because I worked for, you know, warehouse. I was a warehouse manager for Unified Grocers. I was a forklift driver. I was a fucking foreman. I did all this shit trades. And to where they were like, yeah, we trust you to manage our fucking, you know, elevator parts that cost tens of thousands of dollars a pop, you know, like you are sick, you know, like that was just my experience. So like, but I had entry level jobs even before that. Like I worked as a manager at Wiener Schnitzel, you know, it was a hot dog place. I became a manager, one of the youngest managers.
I love their Polish sandwiches,
dude,
by the way.
it's fucking amazing.
So fucking good.
I worked there at high school.
What was your Wiener Schnitzel
Dude,
order?
It was. Oh, I didn't fucking eat there at all. After smelling that all day, dude.
Never mind.
Fuck no, dude. When you work there, hell no.
All right.
But I worked there in high school and then ended up being a fucking manager. You know what I mean? Like I managed people's schedules and all that stuff, right? And then I was also a delivery driver for Round Table Pizza, and then I also worked at a ranch. You know, in the mornings and afternoons. Like I worked all these jobs until
Like
I got
Hidden Valley,
to these.
or
No, I worked. So I worked 28 show horses.
I think
He made a dressing pun. It's
like a
fine.
ranch.
Move
dressing.
on.
Yeah.
He made a dressing pun.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I worked on a ranch.
Hidden Valley Ranch.
It was a really fucking tough job, actually. But I worked all throughout high school for that ranch. But I worked all these jobs and then ended up getting a nice job. And I still drove. I drove 3 hours one way, by the way, because of traffic. It was an hour and a half away, and it took me 3 hours to get there, 3 hours back. And I still worked a night shift job, and I had a lot of money. Even though it was still very expensive where I lived, because I chose to move out of Antelope Valley to Santa Clarita in Valencia, and it was very expensive.
Oh, yeah, more money.
And so I really didn't I didn't have a lot of spending money, but I made that choice because I was like, sick, I got kids, I want them to live in Valencia. You know, but I could have totally lived in the Antelope Valley and fucking made bank, right? Like I could have been fucking driving the dopest car, dude. Like, but no, I chose to be fucking paycheck to paycheck, even though I was making a lot of money. I still think all of that shit is the American dream. I was able to do all of that and survive and have children and be able to up and fucking move to Idaho
And do it legally.
and and work random fucking jobs here, dude, and still make it work into our entrepreneurship where it's at now. I would have never been here full time. I wouldn't have a business full time if I stayed there, but I made the choice to be like, fuck this job. I'm going to take a job that I could have been making $300,000 a year cap, you know, to a fucking $30,000, $60,000 a year job at fucking CNC machine ABC over there.
Yeah.
Because I made the choice, man. But like, I wouldn't say, fuck, Standard Brothers should have paid me a wage where I should have been living in Valencia. Like, hell no,
Yeah.
dude. Like, I don't expect them to pay me a wage there.
Well, one of my main points, though, Josh, is that you are an exceptional individual, and
I think
And
he should,
this-
I
this
think he
is-
should be Attorney General of the United States.
Dude.
and it's
He's
gonna
gonna be a senator,
and
he's
it's
gonna be
gonna
Attorney
sound
General.
really cocky here, but
front
I
of
think
me,
I
yeah.
am too, because
Yeah.
nothing's ever been good enough. Like I knew exactly what I wanted, and I quit the jobs as they went.
Sorry, I just looked over and saw Joe.
It's pretty cool, man.
Joe's enjoying it. He loves the podcast. He wants to be a regular guest every Friday night.
I think it's really cool. Because you guys are so raw. It's
Well, we're not going to, after the podcast, Travis and Nathan
Well,
are going to be
no,
like, thanks for disagreeing with me, you asshole. I'm not your friend.
You little
Raw is how I describe what I'm doing to Josh's mom later.
it's not true. No, yeah. I guess distilling it down, is the American dream dead? I go, yeah. I think what happened was, I think it's been a long time. You know, I'm not going to get it. It's not political. It is political, but I'm not going to get into it. But I think that there's been, in the last, 25, actually longer than that, probably since the Clinton administration, there's been a sordid effort to extinguish the spirit of what Americans really want.
Yeah.
And dumb it down. Like, this is good enough for you. This is good enough. Yeah, that's a theory. I'm not saying it's happened.
No, it's kind of what I've been saying this whole time.
But I think in order to I don't think that spirit's completely extinguished. I think it'll rise out of the ashes with a group of small businesses. In fact, it's amazing. I think that, is Gen Z the most recent one, or is
No, it's Gen Alpha now.
what is it now?
Gen Alpha.
Oh my God.
Is it really?
Gen Alpha. Yeah, Gen Alpha.
Oh, I bet they're all alpha males. That is
Those
awesome.
fucking alphas, dude.
No, what is it? What is
Gen
it?
Alpha is from 2008 on.
What is
Yeah.
that? Well, that's a perfect time. I mean, those guys.
Gen Alpha.
Or it might be
Because
2007
I'm
on.
telling you, I'll give you an example. My nephew, I think he's 23 or 24.
Hey,
He's graduating from Baylor, all right? And I don't know. My sister and her husband, fantastic people. They researched. They wanted to make sure he went to college, and their daughter too. But she didn't feel like doing that and did something else. So he graduates in May, right? And I thought, what are you going to do, Joe? I told him that. He got out of high school, and he took a year off. And my sister was all pissed off. And I said, well, maybe he's just, these kids now are like, if you're 19, you're like 16. You know what I mean? And I said, let him take the summer off. Fuck off, surfed, or whatever he wants to do. And he went to, they accepted a Baylor full ride.
Yeah.
Now he's getting out of there. Aviation, he wanted to be a pilot, and he didn't want to do that, but he loves flying. So he got his degree is, I don't know what it's in, some form of aviation management. So he's like very much in demand.
That's cool.
But
Nice.
anyway, he's gonna, is he gonna come to graduation? I go, no. Why would I go to that? You're in Baylor. 17,000 kids are going to graduate in a stadium. There's no room. You go to a bar, it'll be crowded. What a stupid thing.
You're not going to go to his graduation?
No,
If I can
no,
literally, Joe is my spirit animal when I'm older, bro.
no. Because what I want to do is I want to get out and I'll drive home, drive back to, my sister lives down in Southern California. And I said, yeah, then what? And he goes, well, then you fly down and take me out to dinner and we'll have a good time.
Nice.
I go, that's cool.
That's cool.
But I said, what are you going to do going forward? He had this letter I wrote him when I got out of high school. I said, you know, your parents are going to want you to go to college, you know, and I think that's a good thing because you really don't know what you want to do. But I said, you know, I'll give you a little guidance on the way. See, I got a theory about that. I think he turned out different than I thought. He's got an incredible moral compass,
Nice.
you know. So I'm going to guide him into something different. If he doesn't want to do it, I don't care what he does. You know,
Right.
he's his own man. But these Gen Alphas, right? I don't think he's a Gen Alpha. He was
No, he wouldn't be. He'd be Gen Z like
a
me.
Gen Z like you, right? I think these Gen Alphas are a lot more like him and like you. All right, they're a little bit more smart. They're not going like, at least the ones I see on TV, you know. And I travel a lot, so I see a lot of people. They seem to be a little bit more. I wouldn't say the word conservative. They're a little more knowledgeable. Like they're thinking, you know, this country's not on the right track. You know. And I'm not saying Republican, conservative. I'm not saying that bullshit. I'm just saying it was very obvious that these kids were going, if I'm going to survive in this world, I don't know all of them, but I just saw more of that going, I'm rejecting that. I'm rejecting that weird socialist bullshit. Because
Yeah.
it really was. And it would amaze me when I was talking to some people and watching it on television, that some of these kids in these colleges that were under attack were going, it's just bullshit. This isn't making any sense. And they almost looked like they understood that, you know, their education didn't mean anything, even though their parents were spending a fortune putting them through there. That's an observation. I'm
It
not
is
saying
correct.
that's what happened.
I think it's, I mean, to Travis's point, I think it's super bullshit. I mean, like, to another, like, if we had another topic to, like, discuss the fucking, you know, current system of fucking work. Yeah, dude, it's fucking stupid, bro. Like how kids think they need to go to college and they fucking get out and they're like, yo, I can't get a fucking job. I got to work at McDonald's.
So-
yeah, dude, you don't have fucking experience. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You got a degree in fucking communications. Like, I don't know.
So an interesting thing kind of on both of your guys' points. Now, you should not do what I did. What I did is really, really unusual. I technically, the last school year I completed, or last grade I completed, was the 7th grade. And now I went partly through 8th
Get
grade.
out.
I'm not kidding.
Get out.
I'm not kidding. Yeah.
Get out of here, you uneducated
Qualified.
swine.
So, I know. So,
Give me my lawnmower back.
you own my lawnmower? So
Oh, here.
Now we're cheersing. That's fine.
the last school year I completed was the 7th grade. I went partially through the 8th grade, and then my parents pulled me out. And because of that, they put me through, it was called Sylvan. I think they went out of business. But it was meant to be like a, you know, tutoring system.
Sylvan Learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first thing you do when you
They
go
had a really
there
good slogan.
is
It worked.
Yeah. So the first thing they do, though, is they put you through a placement test. And I scored really, really high. Like my lowest grade placement with partially completing the 8th grade year was 11th grade in high school.
Nice.
And so I went, screw this. I'm going to go through and get my GED and basically just spend the next couple years, you know, learning what I have to get the GED, but anything extra is just the stuff I want to.
Sure.
And I think that has led me to where I am. Yeah, to where I am now, where I've had to teach myself a lot of stuff. And I think that's been more and more popular is because there's so much information out there.
Yeah.
Kids my age are learning by choice.
Yeah.
They're seeing the things
That's
that are
well
getting
said.
put. Yeah, they're
Well said.
they're seeing things in college where it's like, you know, STEM majors are learning, you know, social studies and stuff like that, and it's like, well, that doesn't actually pertain to your degree at all. That's just a thing for you to get a gold star saying you did it.
Sure.
And so rather than doing that, I think a lot of people are trying to learn skills and stuff like that to do it themselves. Like for me, my thing was exotic animals, like reptiles and stuff like that. So on top of doing the GED prep stuff, I spent basically 4 years studying everything there is to know about reptiles and invertebrates, things like, tarantulas, scorpions.
Reptilians.
Yeah. And I had a small exotic animal rescue until I was probably about 19 or so. And that's when I realized.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so it's like, I think we're going to see a rise in that.
It was pretty hands-on.
Yeah. I spent like 40 hours a week taking care of these animals and like cleaning their cages and making sure they were fed and the humidity was correct to be as naturalistic as I could possibly make it, and give these animals the best life I could. But on that, more and more people in my age group are choosing that. They're choosing to do their own thing. In fact, I saw a study a while back where it was like Gen Z has the highest proportion of self-employed or like business owners than of any other age group.
There you go.
And I think that's a reflection kind of on what you were saying, where, Gen Z is seeing the bullshit that's happening in the world.
They're not settling.
Yeah. And, there's still a lot of them where it's like they're trying to go the traditional route of like get a regular job, and it's not serving them the way that it did, our parents and grandparents.
Right.
And so that's what's going to continue to push
you can't just choose a job and just stay there.
You can't. Or even choose almost like a business you want to try.
There's no pensions anymore.
Well, not even that, but just like try and choose a business you want to try and progress through.
Yeah.
And because there's so many of them with a lot of these businesses that you just can't do that. The likelihood that you'll start at Walmart and become even a department manager is super slim.
Right.
You don't have that. Even if it started as transition,
you got to be Travis.
You know what? What he said about college is true. I can remember when I was a kid, like 15 or whatever. People would ask my nephew, not my nephews, my cousins would ask my grandfather, what do you want to do? Grandpa said, what do you want to do with your life? He goes, well, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to do this, right? My grandfather would look at him really, really quiet, and he'd go, yeah, well, you're going to go to 4 years of bullshit. He goes, exactly, I'll never forget, he says, you're going to learn about English literature, biology. What's biology? Smart. He goes, this is a science. He goes, basket weaving. He made up all these strange things, right? He goes, and then when you're all done, you have the right square peg and the round hole and the round, like that bullshit. He goes, then you're going to go to medical school and learn about what you're really going to do. Why don't you get out of high school and go to medical school directly, right?
That'd be nice.
I'd rather have 15 years of medical school than all that ancillary bullshit.
Your grandpa's fucking spot on,
totally.
dude.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
Spot on, dude.
Yeah.
I dropped out of. I went to college one semester, and
that's ridiculous.
because I had to pay for it.
So
I went to college for like fucking 3 years and I never got a degree.
Because I had to pay for the shit.
Thank you.
I stopped going because they required me to take
electives.
electives,
Yeah, right.
And the one I got stuck with was
weaving.
history of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just spent $300 for this fucking semester. And I'm like sitting there like penny pushing because I'm paying for this shit myself. And I'm like, I'm going to community college. I'm taking calculus and aerospace A&P.
History of rock and roll.
And then history of rock and roll, bro. And I'm like, why the fuck am I paying for this class, dude? I'm like over here sitting here fucking doing crazy math and then doing aerospace shit, and then I'm over here learning about Bon Jovi and bullshit.
That's right.
You know, and then I'm like, in this elective class was like as much as the other classes per semester, and so I literally was like, fuck this, dude. I just literally got another job. I said, I'm out.
That elective teacher was living their best life, though.
Dude, they were, bro.
Can you imagine?
Dude, they took us to concerts, bro.
Oh my gosh! To talk about rock and roll every single class.
No, that
and to be a teacher,
absolutely loved it, bro.
Oh, that was amazing.
Only his opinion.
The teacher had super long hair.
That music is bad. You're wrong.
Exactly.
That's pedestrian. That's pedestrian music over there.
Okay. No, dude.
Seriously, this is the same. Right after my grandfather would say that, he'd sit there and it's amazing the wisdom these old fuckers have. But he would sit there and look at the TV, and every once in a while he would say, seriously, I can't believe we have color TV. And dude, this was like,
Dude.
gosh, this is like the 90s, right?
Dude, he was a wisdom galore, but then
That's awesome.
This is really cool. He would sit there and he'd say, he'd be watching the Olympics, right? Only because my grandmother had it on, because he hated sports.
Let's go, Grandpa.
And he would look at that and he'd go, it'd be like women's gymnastics, right?
Nice.
And he only watched that because he liked them.
Women?
Yeah.
Dude.
So,
Nice.
That's tight.
I mean, he's a
Okay.
dude, right? He's a dude. He's checking it out. Or it could be diving. Or,
It's actually the volleyball.
No, I thought volleyball was in an Olympic game.
Oh, damn
Anyways,
it.
so the part that was so far out, everything would happen. He goes, my grandma would go, she's from Scotland, and she'd go, oh, look, oh, the women's, the gymnastics team won the gold medal. And my grandfather would look over and go, how do you win a gold medal in gymnastics? She says, well, because they do this, and she'd do her little thing, and my grandfather would be really quiet. He goes, yeah, people are judging her. He would never say it like that. He goes, people are judging her. He goes, let me tell you, the Olympic Games should only be one way. And she goes, oh, what is that, Clyde? He said, the fastest, highest, longest, whatever it is. It needs to be measured, it needs to be scientific. Nothing about from somebody from Finland says she gets a 9. He goes, it's ridiculous. It's for the best. The best is not about opinion. The best can be measured. That's what he said. That's true.
Yeah.
He says it's like the Greeks did it. Javelin, hammer, shot, 100-yard. Who's the fastest? That's it. Can be measured. Hey, you win. That's it. I'm sorry you don't like it, but you win, right? The other one is, oh, you did the right backflip. They go 9.75. No splash on the dive. He goes, that's bullshit. He said, that should be a whole other program. Like he said, after, what was the show he called? That should be on right after Let's Make a Deal. That's what he said. Should be right on our Let's Make a Deal. It's true.
Oh my gosh.
That's what. See, now I know. Now I know where the vibes come from, man.
Yeah.
I vibe with
Honestly,
your grandfather.
Yeah.
100%,
Yeah.
dude.
That's how it was. He goes,
I'm like, yeah, dude. If he,
Very objective, very logical. I like it.
Now they
Yeah.
Called autism.
They got frisbee, dog frisbee in the Olympic Games, man.
Do they actually?
That's my favorite segment.
fucking,
Okay, now we have
Jesus Christ.
maybe we'll have transgender dog frisbee.
All right.
Would the dog or the
Anyway.
would the dog or the trans be trans?
Thank you for joining us.
Quick.
Well, the wide angle is done too, so we've reached the end. It capped out because we went longer
Nice.
than an hour and 30 minutes.
What's it do? Does
at
it
least we're all there.
does like
The phones are all.
Yeah, the phones are
Yeah,
all
that
on
thing's
still.
folded, but now the phones are good. So, yeah, man, let's wrap it up. So, yeah, this was this week's where the fuck. This was this
Right there.
week's TBD talks. I think this was awesome. As you can see, we're not here fucking scripting shit. We all have different opinions. We bring on guests that are fucking super knowledgeable.
We disagree sometimes.
We disagree, and we're still going to be best friends after this. So if you guys want to comment down below your opinions of this topic, feel free. We're not going to fucking hide your comment or delete it or anything like that. We're going to plug it into AI and then respond to you in a great way.
It's gonna be super good.
Wow.
So great. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Joe. Thanks for coming on, Nathan. We appreciate you guys a lot. This was fucking amazing, actually.
Yeah.
So
Congratulations, man. Nathan. I already
Oh, that was for you.
Thank you.
guys.
bet, man.
Okay.
Thank you.
dude, nice.
I
That was the awkward.
Yeah,
the
that's
awkward.
not for
yeah.
you, sir.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That was a blooper.
All right.
All right,
Whatever.
guys.
I didn't
So
want a
thanks-
handshake anyway.
Thanks for watching this episode of TBD Talks, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
3, 2, 1, go on and lose your minds. Woo! Go on and lose it.